And what that's gonna do is it's going to increase the pace, which feels fairly easy. Gotta go. Morning, Trainiacs. You ever have one of those swims where you sleep in and you're like, you know what? I'm gonna outsmart the group here and I'm gonna get a good swim. I'm gonna come in towards the end, have a nice little mellow swim, and then you start out, bam, no warm up with 1,000 meters at race pace. That was me today. The swim outsmarted me. 1,100 meters overall, that's a taper swim. Done, call it a day. Pack it in, go home. Kick your feet up, max and relax. Somebody asked me in the comments earlier this month about how to get better at cycling. And apparently, yeah, I've been ignoring the cycling game. So when I get back to the office, we'll talk about overs and unders your race power for how to get better at cycling. Normally I just answer with cycle more, motherfucker. That's a bad answer. I'm gonna give you some actual help on how to cycle faster. Cycle. All right, before I get into what you can do to improve your cycling, this applies to people whether you've got a power meter, a heart rate monitor, gotta go, or none of those things and you're just going off of rate of perceived exertion. I gotta get out of traffic here. The basic premise is that you start with figuring out approximately what your race pace is going to be, and then you do workouts that are slightly over that race pace for shorter periods of time, gradually building up to longer periods. And then you do workouts for short periods of time at over that race pace, and then gradually build up those periods of time longer and longer until you can hold a pace that is higher than your previous race pace. I can explain this so much better in the office. I swear one of these days I'm gonna rehang that TV. Cycling. Cycling is one of the best aspects about triathlon and the worst aspects about triathlon in the sense that it's very, very easy in a way to get faster at biking. Basically, it's like a pure 1-to-1 ratio. Well, I don't know about 1-to-1, but it's like very strongly positively correlated that the more you bike, the faster you get. That's not necessarily the case with swimming, especially because it's so dependent on, do you have a history of swimming? Are you using the right technique? It's less about overall fitness and time spent in the pool and more about doing it properly. Running is very much the same thing. Running is very dependent on your natural ability. You can run for ages and ages and ages and ages, and most people have a bit of a top end of how fast they can run. Cycling, however, you do it more, you get faster. Straight up. That's all there is to it. And it can be a lot of different types of cycling. Mountain biking helps triathlon. Commuting to work by bicycle helps triathlon. Road cycling helps triathlon. Long rides help triathlon. Short, powerful rides helps triathlon. Basically just time spent putting power into the pedals, it all helps your cycling. But if you want to get the absolute best bang for your buck of cycling time in the saddle, resulting in best times that you can put out in triathlon and being faster and more comfortable in triathlon, you got to get a little bit more specific in addition to just that time in the saddle. So how you start out is by figuring out your FTP. If you don't have a power meter, that's okay. Your FTP, your race pace, you figure it out by doing basically a 20-minute max effort test. You've got a power meter, your FTP number is 95% of the average power that you've put out over the course of that 20 minutes. If you don't have a power meter, think about the average perceived exertion that it feels like you've put out over the course of that 20 minutes and go just a little bit lower than that. That's about your FTP number or your FTP range or your FTP kind of perceived exertion. Now, the race pace number is somewhere around 3/4 of that. So that gives you a bit of a sense of where your race pace is when you actually get into a triathlon. And what you can do is you can use that either perceived exertion or those power numbers to start gradually increasing what your race pace is. And there are two ways that you can do it. Number one is by going at a pace that's lower than that FTP number for longer than the 20 minutes. So in my case, my FTP number towards January of last year was around 257. One of the workouts that I could do to push that number up is going around 200 to 220 watts for longer than 20 minutes. Now, in my opinion, that's not necessarily gonna up your top end speed. It's gonna kind of build your engine. It's gonna build the machine, the locomotive that's gonna keep you going for a long period of time. But if you really wanna bump up that power number, like I say, you can do that same workout. If you don't have a power meter, just going off of perceived exertion, going a little bit slower than you think you would in a race, but for longer periods of time. And what that's gonna do is it's going to increase the pace, which feels fairly easy. Now let's see if I can find the middle. So if this is your FTP number, and there is your race pace, perceived exertion or watt number, you're doing your training down here, but for longer than 20 minutes. And what that's going to do is it's going to raise the floor of what feels easy and feels like a pace that you can sustain for 20, 30, 40 minutes, an hour plus. However, I think that a better way to approach it is to take that FTP number and do bursts at above that. And what that's going to do is raise your ceiling. It's going to raise up the maximum amount of power that you can sustain over the course of those 20 minutes, which will then trickle down to how fast you can go in a race. So let's say in my case, my FTP number is 257 and I can hold that for about 20 minutes. Instead, what I do is go at 280s and 290s, but for 3 or 4 minutes, and then gradually increase that to 5 or 6 minutes, up to 7 or 8 minutes, all the way up to getting close to a higher than my FTP number for more than 20 minutes. And then bam, you got a higher FTP number, which then trickles down to having a higher race pace wattage number, a higher race pace perceived exertion that you can hold. You just become faster. And then to give you a little bit of perspective on how long you should be doing these low, steady state, long, slow distance intervals, if you're banking on an Olympic distance race and going for an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes, you want to be thinking that you're doing those long, steady distances for 2 hours. Like you want to hold it for a long period of time. So you're increasing the amount of time that your heart and your legs and your cardiovascular system can plug away at that chug-a-chug, chug-a-chug, chug-a-chug pace. Make sense? But then with these high, really hard intervals, you can't do them for very long because they're gonna rip apart your legs. It's taxing the maximum amount of effort that you can possibly put out. So in my case, we were doing these all over the course of last winter, and I would do, I think I started with 10 times 2 minutes at a hard effort, and then it grew to 10 times 5 minutes at a hard effort, and eventually it grew to 10 times 7 minutes at a hard effort. No, that can't be right. In total, I think it grew all the way to doing a hard effort for maybe a total of 35 to 40 minutes over the course of an hour and 20 minute workout. And even though that hour and 20 minute workout was so much shorter than the 2.5 hours I was gonna spend during a half Ironman, it actually raised my FTP numbers, my race pace by around 15 to 20%. And it didn't feel that much harder. So there you go, Trainiacs. I have been ignoring, self-admittedly, the cycling aspect of triathlon, which is wild because, hey Mel, coming at you soon. It's wild because I am a huge fan of cycling to improve your overall triathlon time. It's like so much a big part of triathlon that it's almost a bike race. So get better at biking. All right, you ready to edit this?
Yeah.
Yeah.